What is the fastest land vehicle in all of Halo? Back in November, we decided to take on the challenge of finding the fastest Warthog in every Halo game. And oh boy, did we learn a lot about not only measuring stuff, especially stuff like speed, but also having to figure out measurements while working within the confines of older games that don't necessarily have the same tools that some of the newer games have. But this time around, we're on the ultimate quest. We know which Warthog is the fastest, which vehicle is the fastest in its own individual Halo game, and then which vehicle takes the cake as the fastest vehicle in all of the Halo games combined. Let's go ahead and take a closer look. Now, back in November, we ran into an interesting dilemma when it came to measuring vehicle speed, specifically in the Halo games that don't give you an on-screen speedometer. We ended up having to find these speeds out manually by dividing the time it takes to travel a distance by the total amount of distance. So we not only ended up building maps and found locations where we could test them out in the campaign if the game didn't have Forge, but typically we gave ourselves a runway where we could accelerate and then we would measure the final 100 meters. Giving us 200 meters to accelerate and then the final 100 meters to time out how long it takes to clear that 100-meter distance. And that gave us one time, which was the average top speed of the vehicle, which is what we mostly used for finding out the differences between the Warthogs, specifically with the older games. Though there was also a separate top speed that we could measure in only the newer games, and we found that there was a discrepancy of maybe 1 to 2 miles. So our method of finding the average top speed was still not only mostly accurate, but applicable to even the older Halo games where we don't get a real speedometer. This time around, we're just looking for the fastest of each game and the fastest across all of Halo, but otherwise we're going all out using top speeds where we can, and then average top speeds where we can't, and only do extra testing if the times across vehicles across multiple games is very, very close. I know that sounds complicated, don't worry, it'll make sense in just a second. Let's start things off by looking at Halo 2 Anniversary. For this one, we did run some basic tests timing out different speeds and whatnot, but since Halo 2A has a speedometer, this will be what we're mostly basing our times off of. In our last video, we found that the Halo 2A Warthog had an average top speed of 130 kilometers an hour, but its true top speed here was actually 143 kilometers an hour. So in this case, we kind of have two scores for the Warthog, but we're mostly looking at that green score here. So to figure out the champion of Halo 2 Anniversary, we just have to test every other vehicle in the game. The Ghost was up first, hitting a top speed of 91 kilometers an hour, which wasn't even close. We tested both the Mongoose and the Gun Goose, both hit an equal top speed of 109 kilometers an hour, so there's no difference between the Gun Goose version and the regular Mongoose version unless it's an acceleration. The Scorpion only traveled at 35 kilometers an hour, making it the slowest in Halo 2A. And then while the Wraith itself isn't really all that fast, during the time where it boosts, it does hit a top speed of 101, though this doesn't quite catch up to the Warthog's 143, which means that the civilian Warthog still remains the fastest vehicle in Halo 2 Anniversary. Now we decided to go back to Halo Reach to run some tests there. Now in this case, the Warthog doesn't have a civilian variant, so while we were testing out the Warthog in race mode, we found that the top speed itself was about 124 kilometers an hour. The Mongoose was only 95 kilometers an hour, and the Ghost was even slower at 91 kilometers an hour, tying that Halo 2A speed. Now, timing, these ones weren't that hard, but the next couple of vehicles got a little bit trickier because race mode in Halo Reach doesn't let you spawn in the next sets of vehicles that we needed to time. So we ended up having to go into the custom games file and figure out what logistics you can change, and you can allow the ability to exit your vehicle for a limited amount of time in the rule set, and you can also allow vehicles to spawn in and access to other vehicles. So if we wanted that little speedometer to appear in the bottom corner, we had to kind of jump through some hoops to make these other vehicles appear, which we did. We had to use Forge, we had to load in wraiths and stuff. It was kind of a pain. Nonetheless, we were able to figure it out. Now, the Scorpion tank remained the slowest ground vehicle with Halo Reach at 54 kilometers an hour, though it is worth noting that's still significantly faster than the 35 kilometers an hour that Halo 2 Anniversary's Scorpion tank has. We moved on to test out the the Revenant speed, and we found that the Revenant's top speed was 109 kilometers an hour, still slower than the Warthog's top speed. But then we tested the Wraith, and this is actually really interesting. While the Wraith doesn't move that fast on its own, when it's in its full top speed acceleration, when you have that little short boost, you can reach 130 kilometers an hour. This is 29 kilometers an hour faster than H2A's version, which also makes it faster than the Halo Reach Warthog, meaning for Halo Reach, at the very least, the Wraith is the fastest ground vehicle. So surprisingly, Halo 2A and Halo Reach are the only two games that have speedometers, as we found out. So for measuring the vehicles, we have to completely change our method moving forward, and things got really complicated. Halo 3 was next, and while we can get accurate enough numbers of a vehicle traveling at a top speed for a long time and measuring the distance, along with the length of time that it takes to travel a specific distance, measuring the top speed of a vehicle that has a very short boost turned out to be really complicated. So we decided to save those for last. We tested the Mongoose, which seemed a little bit faster, about 96 kilometers per hour, or almost 60 miles per hour. I did think the Prowler was a lot faster than it actually turned out to be, but after measuring it on a distance at top speed, it appears to be about 92 or so kilometers an hour. The Scorpion was a little bit faster than Halo Reach's Scorpion tank at 56 kilometers per hour, or 34 miles per hour. And the Halo 3 Ghost is pretty slow too. But the Ghost has a pretty consistent boost, so measuring the top speed wasn't difficult like what we had to deal with for the next two. The Wraith and the Chopper, and as we know from Halo Reach, the Wraith actually could hit a higher top speed than any of the other vehicles because of its peak during its boosting period. And this is really tricky because the vehicles otherwise travel very slowly compared to the incredibly brief moment of top speed that is hit during the apex of a boost. So we ended up recording footage of these vehicles, trimming down just the moment of the boost already in full acceleration, not even including the heat up of the boost, while the flag distance was visible on the screen, so we could see how many meters are traveled during that brief, less than a second long period. Honestly, I was unsure if this would even work correctly. I ran the numbers and was really impressed. Then I sent all of the stuff over to Dim, who is I don't know, doing some math stuff in college or something. I don't know.
I'm studying to become an accountant.
And he ran the numbers and was like, yeah, this is really fast. So if we are measuring everything correctly, we captured this moment that's looping on the screen right now, where the Wraith was in full boost for 0.41 seconds. The first frame of this clip starts at 249.2 meters away from the flag, and the last frame of this 0.41 second long clip ends at 233.3 meters. That means in this short amount of time, it traveled 15.9 meters. Now to figure out the kilometers per hour, we have to figure out how many meters would be covered in one entire second, or technically one entire hour, if it could continue to travel at this maximum speed. So we divide and we get 38.7 meters per second, which ends up being 139,000 meters in an hour. But then we move the decimal over to make it kilometers. And this Wraith hit a top speed of 139 kilometers per hour, or 86 miles per hour for a brief moment. We ran the same numbers against the Chopper, and its numbers were just a little bit slower at 133 kilometers per hour. And obviously this process is very different from how we were measuring things in the other Halo games, but technically these numbers should hold up, unless the frame rate being changed to 60 frames is playing some weird factor in the way that this number appears when we're boosting and then how the number updates with the distance. We're hoping it's accurate for now. We're gonna go ahead and give the Wraith the crown for Halo 3 and then test the rest of the games and see what the speeds are there. If it ends up being a very close tie between multiple vehicles, then we're gonna go back and run a ton of tests again, but we wanted to check the other games first to make sure there's not a landslide faster vehicle in Halo Infinite or something like that. But yeah, look at this. The Wraith's in 2 first place positions so far. So at this point, we were already feeling like there was maybe something weird with the way we're measuring things, or something was off with our entire system in place. And if you've already maybe noticed what's going on, we'll touch on that more in a minute. But we decided to test Halo Combat Evolved, there aren't that many vehicles to test. We knew already that the Warthog in Combat Evolved from our last video was significantly slower than all the other Warthogs, but we did remeasure it and then measured it against a Ghost, and it turned out from this measurement at least, the Ghost was about 72 kilometers per hour or 44 miles per hour, just a few kilometers per hour faster than the Warthog. So at the very least, we could rule out both of these vehicles as being the fastest in the franchise and start to focus more on which one is the fastest, because there is something weird about our math that we're going to have to touch on, obviously, when we get to the later games. When we got to Halo 4, we were just looking for a couple of major things. Was there a vehicle faster than the Warthog? Because that would be the contender for the franchise fastest. The Mongoose and the Gun Goose are the same speed, and neither of them are faster than the Warthog. The Ghost has a limited boost, but still is slower than a Warthog, and the Mantis and the Tank are still really slow. Now, unlike the Halo 3 or Reach Wraith, the Halo 4 Wraith has an incredibly long boost length, though it never feels super fast in the boost period, so I think they ended up going for a slower boost that lasted longer, because we calculated this thing traveling at around 90 kilometers per hour at its absolute peak, or 55 miles per hour. So with all this in mind, we were heading into Halo 5 Guardians. Now, Halo 5 was where we really were going to be able to test out our numbers and everything, because Halo 5's Rally Warthog took the title in our last Warthog video for being the fastest. And I still think, as far as Warthogs are concerned, this Rally Warthog is the fastest across the franchise. However, the problem we are running into is the measurement system in Halo. As you guys know, in our last video, we painstakingly went through making sure we had some sort of way to calculate meters traveled so that we could then extrapolate that and calculate our distance traveled by the time it takes to travel a certain distance. What we realized upon doing more tests specifically in Halo 5, going back and testing things in the previous Halos that we just talked about, and just looking into different details, is there's two main problems that we're running into with our measurements. Firstly, it doesn't seem like our distance indicator is always consistently tracking our distance, especially in games like Halo 4 and maybe Halo 3. When we started testing things in Halo 5, that's when we really started to notice things weren't adding up necessarily just correctly, especially when we would take our footage, load it into Premiere, and go frame by frame trying to figure out distance traveled in a certain amount of time, which, mind you, capturing moments less than a second long are required for vehicles with boosts like the Chopper or the Wraiths. And in our last video, we just opted for the average top speed and would get a score and then compare the scores across the board. I think that was the best way to handle it. However, it doesn't work in the instance of these vehicles that have top speed boosts, so we had to change the whole system up for this video, and I don't think the new system works very well. I had this feeling when it came to Halo 3 specifically that for whatever reason, our vehicle is moving obviously at the 60 frames per second that MCC updated Halo 3 to be, and this distance counter is trying to keep up as best as it can, but I think in universe or in game, we're probably moving at a faster rate than what a normal 1 to 1 second time would have been in the original Halo 3 days. Maybe it could just be one thing or the other thing too, and we really don't have a clear-cut way of knowing. I just had a feeling with Halo 3, some of those numbers seem to be skewed really highly. But then this is the real indicator, was with Halo 5 when we were measuring these short boosts on the Wraith. We had to calculate 0.4 seconds, which is the length of time where the Wraith is at its apex in speed in the middle to the end of the boost. And we took just a 0.4 second period of time in Halo 5, it traveled from 117.92 meters away from where I was standing with a sniper rifle, all the way down to just 97.16 meters away from me. So nearly 20 meters in just 0.4 seconds. And this is where I'm like, this number can't be the most accurate thing, right? Or how is it moving like that? That ended up calculating out to being 182 kilometers per hour, which was way higher than our max speed we had when we originally tested the Rally Warthog in Halo 5 Guardians. So we took the Rally Warthog this time and only timed 0.41 seconds of the Rally Hog to try to get its score based on just a short amount of time in around the same distance. And once again, we had a number significantly higher than our average top speed we were getting when we originally tested our numbers in Halo 5 Guardian. 229 kilometers an hour, which is astronomically high. There is no way that this number is accurate, because we know that the average top speed of this vehicle is nearly 100 kilometers per hour less than this. We tested the Gold Ghost, which is the fastest Ghost in the game, and got 119 kilometers per hour, which is also really fast. So I think if we measure all of the vehicles in Halo 5 Guardians with this method, I think we will consistently get an accurate comparison between the vehicle speeds, where the Rally Warthog still still ends up coming out on top over the Wraith here. However, since it seems like the only measurement option we have in these games that don't have speedometers is differently updated across each game, means that unfortunately we were finding out here that it's very unlikely we can get accurate numbers to compare Halo vehicles across each game. So in our first video, we ran into the problem where we were just looking for measurement tools, period. But now it seems like even more now than ever that the measurement tools to decide what a meter is and how fast something travels can be completely dependent on which game engine it's in. Remember, in our Warthog video, we also looked at Halo Combat Evolved's Warthog from the MAW, the Warthog run, which there was rumors that it had a unique speed to it, or it had to have the speed bumped up to survive the Warthog run. However, when we measured things, we didn't find that Warthog any faster than the other Combat Evolved Warthogs. But we were confused why there was all these rumors. But recently, Jamie Griesemer, a Bungie developer who worked on the Halo games, actually brought up the Combat Evolved Warthog from the MAW specifically, and he ended up clarifying things without even realizing it. He tweeted in response to some like random video game development fact that you know, saying that if you set the inertia tensor of the Warthog in Halo 1 to a negative number, it drives like an older version. This was done because last minute tuning broke the final jump of the trench run, so that one Warthog needed to be reverted. Someone then responded to that asking why the Warthog on the MAW sometimes seems to pitch forward in every jump, and then sometimes it stays floaty. And Jamie Griesemer responded saying it's usually low frame rate. The vehicle physics run every frame. So if the front wheel spends too long unsupported before the back wheel comes off of the jump, you end up in a nosedive. So now this confirms that essentially Combat Evolved at the very least, but likely all of the Halo games as well, even with the shift to the Havoc engine between Halo 1 and 2, have some sort of marriage between the frame rate and the physics engine itself, which very well could mean that the vehicles traveling in a higher frame rate than maybe what they originally were are technically moving at a faster time in space or whatever, at least in the game engine world, which would skew our numbers even more. Now, the other interesting thing here is every single Halo engine from Halo 2, 3, even Halo 5 Guardians and Halo Infinite all are built on an engine that's built off of the previous Halo title. So now we're kind of dealing with this issue where all these games being built across 20 different years could be causing drastically inaccurate numbers when we're trying to measure these things using just in-game tools. Since our first video, we were able to set a static distance, figuring out the distance ahead of time before driving the Warthog that distance. I feel like we were able to get a comparable speed across each Halo, but since we're trying to capture such a small speed with the Wraiths and the Choppers, that's where the variables between engines really cause our measurements to fall apart. I mean, I guess theoretically, if we had an in-game timer on and we use that in-game timer as our measurement of how long a second is, and then we also knew that that in-game timer was accurate to how many ticks we're updating in the game engine, we could possibly get a more accurate number, but we don't have all of the resources necessary to guarantee that our numbers would be accurate each time. To put this as an easier example to understand, Halo Reach had the speedometer right there on the screen, and we decided to replicate the Halo 5 measurement of the Wraith, and the speed that we got in full boost measuring things was different than the top speed shown on the speedometer. So where does that unfortunately leave us? It doesn't look like we'll be able to find necessarily the exact numbers to be able to definitively tell if one game's vehicle is faster than a different game's vehicle, but we can still go and figure out which vehicle is the fastest in each game. And since we couldn't measure Halo 2 before, we can actually look at Halo 2 for once too. So let's go through and figure out what we found for each Halo game. Halo Combat Evolved had the Ghost as the fastest vehicle in the game for land vehicles. Halo 2's Warthog was the fastest vehicle in its game, just narrowly beating out the Spectre, though we do have to put like a little asterisk on this because we couldn't measure the Wraith's boost top speed without any measurement tools at all. This was done just strictly through like racing. Halo 3, as skewed as our numbers may be, seemingly had the Wraith as the fastest vehicle, just barely faster than the Chopper at full boost. Using Halo Reach's speedometer, once again, the Wraith took the lead here. Halo 4, we were back to the regular Warthog being the fastest vehicle, as its Wraith is significantly slower than everything else. Halo 5 was interesting. The Gold Ghost was pretty quick, and even with our new measurement system, it still couldn't quite hold up with the Wraith at full boost or with the Rally Hog, and it seemed like the Rally Warthog ended up still remaining the fastest vehicle in Halo 5 Guardians. Okay, so with all that in mind, let's go ahead and look at Halo Infinite. Now, our actual measurements don't actually matter because of the things we just talked about in this video, but we at least are able to compare Infinite vehicles now that we have Forge and get some valuable data, at least comparing Infinite across itself. Firstly, we found that the Warthog and the Rocket Hog are the same speed. We thought the Razorback would be faster than the Warthogs, and it's actually not. It's the same speed as well. The Warthog's also still faster than the Mongoose and the Gungoose. The Warthog is faster than the Chopper and this Chopper variant. It also beats out the Ghost, the Scorpion, and the Wraith, even with its boost. In universe, it clocked about 118 kilometers an hour, which is about the same as the Halo 5 regular Warthog. So off of pure speculation, I still think overall the Halo 5 Rally Warthog is probably the fastest, but we don't really have any definitive way of knowing for sure just yet, unless we can come up with some new system that we're not thinking of, or we crack into the game files, but the game files refer to everything as units per second, and then it gets more confusing because a unit in Halo 2 might not be the same size as a unit in Halo 3. It could all be scaled differently. We did think about taking the measurements by trying to come up with some sort of constant, like let's line up a bunch of Scorpion tanks, and then we'll be like, this is 10 Scorpion tanks in length, and then we compare it across each Halo game. However, if you put a Scorpion tank next to another vehicle like a Warthog, you'll see that in each game, the sizes and scale of each vehicle could be a different size. So a Scorpion tank might be a little bit longer in one game than another, and that would cause a whole nother issue. But ultimately, if you came for which vehicle is the fastest, I'm still banking my money on that Rally Hog in Halo 5 because it still was faster than a Wraith in full boost. But rather than trying to force our math to work for the sake of this video, we thought it would be better to just kind of be transparent with how the numbers fell and why our measurement system doesn't work, and there might never actually be a real measurement system we can use unless 343 like releases information that we could end up using. Okay, but then even after all of this research, we realized one major thing that we missed out on. We didn't really look at the meme vehicles from Halo Reach that were added in the MCC update, and man, how could we have messed this up so badly? So we did load up in Halo Reach and we added in all these amazing vehicles that we hadn't tested that probably aren't going to be any faster than the fastest vehicles, but we had to take a look either way. So we tested the Warthog Transport, which is the same speed as regular Warthog, against the truck that you normally see on Winter Contingency. The truck has a very slow starting acceleration, which seems like it's already much slower than the Warthog Transport, though it does catch up a little bit. Then it stays at the same speed before the Warthog Transport starts to pull away again. So it seems like this one still doesn't quite beat out the Warthog Transport. We then tested the forklift, the cart, and the long truck, and the cart actually started off the fastest, making a quick acceleration early on, and the truck was really slow at first, but then it quickly pulled up ahead and just left everything behind in the dust, and then the forklift eventually did make it to the end of the runway, slowly but surely. So then we went and put the truck against the van, and these both started off very slow, but the van did end up pulling ahead quite a bit, making the van faster than all these other vehicles. But then we pit the van against the short truck, and the short truck still beat it, meaning that after the Warthog, the short truck is the next fastest, and then everything else is slower from there. None of these vehicles are the fastest, but I am glad that we got to check that forklift out, just to be sure, because we never knew. We did know, but maybe in our heads we wanted to hope that the forklift somehow would come out on top. We just like the forklift. Oh, and then in case you're wondering, after that we did go and test the elephant in Halo 3. We didn't really even test against anything. We just started driving them around. It's not faster than anything, but interestingly enough, if you drive them out of bounds on Sandbox, you won't get killed by the Guardians, which was something we did not know. So that was cool. But anyways, if you thought we at least gave it a good try, let us know in the comments down below or hit the like button or something. Thanks to all of our patrons for supporting us and our channel, making videos like this that are kind of out there possible. We appreciate you guys. If anyone wants to join up with the rest of the patrons, throw a couple dollars our way. It goes way further than you guys probably think it does. It does mean the world to us. Anyways, we'll see you guys next time with a brand new video.